cheapest, humblest material we've got. It's 90 cents a metre. So it's very, very cheap. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is try and make seamless joints between these two edges. So that means you plane 1, 2, 3, 4 edges nice and true. Okay. Now it's a tricky little job. So back in England, this would be 2 metres long. We'd have to plane them straight and build it up to about 600 wide for a kitchen bench top. And it took me 18 months to conquer. Now the reason we had to do that was because the equipment we had wasn't that great. It took me 18 months, and I finally conquered it. And it's about using that plane to peel shavings off at will, but also knowing where to get them off and where to take them off to make it work better or worse. And you can go 1 step forward and 5 back. Some of people do that. And I celebrated and went straight to the club and had 2 pints to celebrate. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, and this doesn't matter if this is a tabletop, no matter what it is, we want to get these 3 pieces united so it looks like one piece. So the first thing we're going to do is just inspect, just visually what they're like. Now, if they've got knots in them, you can choose those pieces. I've machined over, so you should be able to hand pick a few ones you need. If you've got a knot in there, what do you think effect that's going to have on your planing?
Not great.
Pardon?
Not great.
Not great. It's a lot harder because that's all end grain essentially poking in there. Remind me today, Jason, about the end grain. So if we don't get onto it, keep reminding me because I may forget. So Jason, we're going to talk about planing end grain as well. But I want to utilise these plates to get these pieces glued. So that knot is a lot harder. Okay? The knots come up beautiful once they're sanded, but if it's along that edge, it's a lot harder. So have a look at your pieces, and I want you to have a look at the growth rings on there. So those growth rings are really wide apart because this material is fed hormones or whatever to make it grow quickly, so they can chop it down. So 1, 2, 3, 4 years of growth in a section that size. I can show you a piece of cured pine, same thickness, same width, maybe 150 years to get to the same size because of the growth rings. So with those growth rings, it's really important to try and keep this piece flat, that we alternate them. So one goes on one way, and one goes the other way like that, but they're alternating. So the reason that is because this is my original drawing. So if that piece, there's our material looking in from the end, I'll do exactly the same. So if it's going to change shape, it's going to go into that shape. So if we have them all lined up the same, they'll all move together and go, thank you very much, and we'll create that shape, only subtly. So the bigger the pieces, the more that would be exaggerated. So on a tabletop, you don't want $1,000 worth of material doing that. It's really important that you alternate those growth rings like that. So it looks like that at the bottom, like that. So once we've selected them and we've alternated those growth rings, we're going to have a look there. I'll do that one there with the knot. So we've got them in that position, and we're going to go there and there. So it's important to get a good mark across so that we know we don't have to touch that edge. When you're fitting things together, they go back to the way that you tried to fit them 4 minutes ago when you were frustrated. If you keep trying them different ways, you're going to go further away. Okay? So if we look at these panels, or these pieces, they're pretty flat and square at the moment. So all we're doing, guys, is just basically planing those edges to make a seamless joint. That's all we're trying to do. So whilst we're doing that, we've got to make sure that we keep it nice and square. So if we have a look up there, if we get a flat, we get a straight edge, it's nice and flat. If we start planing them on an angle, we're going to end up with that situation. So that's what we've got to keep an eye on. Okay? So we want them nice and flat there rather than going up in a shape like that. So we're going to take the first one, we're just going to put it in the vise. And because it's nice and, it's pretty much 90 degrees in here, so these grooves have been cut by a laser, so it's all laser cut fine. So all we're doing is hopefully taking that flatness and just getting rid of those grooves and making one continuous shaving. So if you get one continuous shaving from this point to this point, that's when you need to stop. So you're on a nice fine setting on here, so your plane iron might have endured a bit of pressure under the activities we've done, so you might need to take it apart, just make sure it's razor sharp. If it's razor sharp, the hair's off, you'll find it's a lot easier. So we're starting on that angle. Get your body weight so you're on, way over the top of the work, and we're just going to take it from one end to the other. So all it's done is just took off those little high spots. Get that out of the way. I can see a bit of bark off on that. Okay, so nice good body weight. Pressure down at the start on a slice action rather than a head on. And we're just going to take it from one end. So eventually, you probably don't have to plane off that round. You probably need to go down a little bit just so that you can see that the joint's moving. So obviously if we keep planing, we're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's an incy wincy and you've just got one olive on there. Like, so again, lots of pressure down at the front, and I'm transferring that pressure to the back, but still maintaining subtle pressure because otherwise it'll skip. And again, if you're razor sharp, now I can feel, and Jason will probably be able to see, I'm playing that on an angle. I can feel it's on an angle. So I'm going to leave that one at that, but it's definitely on an angle. So I'm going to pick up my next piece. You can see it's sort of tipping over. So not the demonstration I wanted to execute, but what I'll do is I'll see if I can get it back so that it's perfect. So I'm going to come same as before, just take it from one end to the other. So it might be on an angle because I've got too much blade sitting down here and not enough on the other side. So it might just be your setup, or you might be just sort of doing that. It's not super sharp, this plane. So I can see that is going to be out a lot there. You can see that. The join is actually pretty good. So once you've shot those edges, you can have a look and inspect the joint to see how it's closing up. If you get it up to the light, you won't see any gaps. So what I'm going to try and do now, and you could probably, if you want to, use your square as a reference. So you can see I've got a bit of daylight through there. So it needs to be, so you can physically put a mark on there, and I'm going to plane off. I'm going to try and intercept that and plane that and get it into a better spot. So I'm going to tip that plane softly on an angle. Again, it's better if you take continuous shavings from one end to the other, because then we're not going to alter the original straightness of that. So I'm just going to have a look at that, and we might be able to see. It's definitely in a better, squarer position, but we've probably got that situation happening. So I'm going to try and correct it back up and try and get an even shaving from the middle. So that's definitely a lot better. So I'm going to try and trim this one up. So this one is on probably worse than an angle. So it's probably beneficial that I do it wrong because you're probably going to get some of these issues. So you see there, the pencil mark there on the mark shows you, that's where we need to plane off because that's a high spot. So again, I'm just tipping it on just a subtle angle. Now the other thing I haven't mentioned, guys, is that it's not been that impacting is the grain direction. So if you're not getting a smooth surface, turn it around and come from the other side. Pretty much at the same point as that. And I'm going to try and correct that up again. What it's doing, guys, is about being able to peel shavings off at will, giving you that maximum control. That's definitely better. I'm lining up those marks. So using your eyes again, you can sight it. So it's leaning over a little bit, but it's a lot better. So then we're looking at the actual tightness of the joints. So this point where we've got the gap happening. So I've got that gap happening at the end. Okay, so again, I'm going to use my eyes just to sight down it. So what it's showing is it's just jumping off towards the back. So this again is really useful because it's likely what you're going to come up against. So we'll put that there. I'm going to try and get rid of that gap. So I can see that this piece comes straight and it goes down like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mark there. I'm going to take 2 shavings off that point. I don't want to take any more there because that's going to create that gap. It's going to make it bigger. So I might even, excuse me, I'm just going to start the plane there. Take 1 shaving. 2. Plane's not performing that well, I need to. But you can just see, with that subtle change, it's closing it up a little bit better. Okay? So I want to try and get, we want to try and get them as good as possible. We're going to get pressure behind there, so that's going to close them up as well. We're going to glue and get a lot of pressure behind there, so that's going to close up a little bit of that. But if you try and force the gap shut and it's not fitting, it will show later on once we start sanding and planing these down. So that's what we're doing, guys. So across that joint there and that joint there, we're just planing those 3 pieces to get a seamless joint. So we've got about 10 minutes until we rendezvous. So, have a look, alternate your growth rings, get them marked out, check your planes, and you can make a start. So it's a tricky activity, guys, in terms of you might get frustrated. So I'll help when you. Great.